Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fundamental idea, a concept that literally shapes how billions of people see themselves, their purpose, and really their entire place in the universe. All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to start with a question that people have been asking forever, right? You look up at the stars, you look at the crazy complexity of life, and you can't help but wonder, who or what is running the show? So to really get a handle on this, we've got to nail down our terms. The whole thing really hinges on one single, powerful word at the very heart of it all, Lord. But what does that actually mean?
You know, it's interesting. The source material breaks this word down into three core ideas that all build on each other. It's not just some title, right? It's more like a complete job description for the master of the universe.
Okay, so it kicks off with the owner, the one who possesses absolutely everything. And from that ownership, you get authority. That makes him the master, the one who's ultimately obeyed. But here's the thing. It's not some distant, hands-off role. He's also the sustainer, which means he's actively nurturing and perfecting everything. So the key takeaway? It's this complete package deal. Not just owning stuff, but active mastery and this constant caring upkeep. Now this is where it gets really interesting. In the details. The sources make a big distinction here. The word Lord, without a "the," can mean a human in a pretty limited way. You know, like the lord of the house. They own one specific thing. But when you add that definite article, the Lord, it completely changes the meaning. It becomes absolute. It's about all-encompassing ownership and authority over everything. It's a title that can only, and I mean only, refer to one being, God. All right, let's build on that. The next idea the sources bring up is a big one. They argue that this belief in a single supreme Lord, well, it isn't something you just learn from a book or from your parents. It's actually baked into our human consciousness from the start. This concept has a name, fitra. Think of it like a spiritual default setting. The sources describe it as this pre-installed awareness of a higher power that's just there. It's inside us before any teachers or society can come along and start influencing our beliefs. And look, this isn't some fringe idea either. You have scholars throughout history arguing that this innate feeling is a totally universal human experience. It's like it's hardwired into our DNA. It's the starting point, the baseline from which all our other beliefs or even disbeliefs grow. So where's the proof for this? Well, the sources suggest you see it most clearly when we're pushed to our absolute limits. Think about it. When someone's in a true crisis, a plane going down, a ship sinking, all that denial just seems to melt away. What do? They instinctively cry out to a higher power for help. The argument is that's the fitra, the default setting, breaking through all the noise. Okay, so this all seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? We're born with this belief in one creator who owns and sustains everything. Simple. But hold on, because this is where things take a really surprising turn. We're about to hit a puzzle right at the heart of this whole thing. I mean, you'd think that just acknowledging one creator is monotheism, right? End of story. But the sources throw a fascinating historical curveball at that idea, and it forces us to dig a little deeper. And this right here just perfectly illustrates the core problem. See, the polytheists in ancient Arabia, the very people the prophets were sent to guide, they were asked these exact questions. Who made you? Who brings the rain? Who's the boss of the universe? And guess what they said? Again and again, their answer was God. They totally got the part about a single supreme creator. But their actions? That was a whole different story. So their mistake, as scholars like Mujahid pointed out, wasn't that they didn't believe in the Lord. They had that part down pat. Their huge, fundamental error was in who they worshipped. They knew who was in charge, but they were praying to, sacrificing for, and asking for help from idols and all these other intermediaries. And that brings us to the most crucial distinction of all. The sources split monotheism into two distinct parts. First, you have the monotheism of lordship. That's knowing and saying who's in charge. Then you have the monotheism of worship, and that's acting on that knowledge by making sure all your devotion goes exclusively to that one Lord. See the difference? The polytheists had the first part, but they were completely missing the second. So, okay, how do we get to this knowledge of a single Lord? The sources argue that the evidence isn't locked away in some ancient, dusty book. Nope, it's woven right into the fabric of reality itself, so it's accessible to literally everyone. This evidence is broken down into 4 main pillars. We already talked about the innate proof, that natural feeling, the fitra. Then you have scriptural proof from revelation, experiential proof from things like answered prayers, and finally, the rational proof, which is all about pure logic. Let's just take a quick peek at the reasoning behind that last one. All right, so the first logical point challenges the whole idea of something just popping into existence out of thin air. It basically says, look, something can't come from absolute nothing. It's a logical dead end. So this incredibly complex existence must have had an originator. The next point tackles the paradox of creating yourself. I mean, think about it. For us to create ourselves, we would have had to exist before we existed, which makes 0 sense, right? It's impossible. So the conclusion is, we must have been created by something or someone else. And the third argument just points to the universe itself, the unbelievable complexity, the fine-tuning, from the laws of physics that hold galaxies together down to the biology of a single cell. And it asks a simple question: what's more rational? Believing that this mind-bogglingly intricate system is the work of an intelligent designer, or that it's all just one giant cosmic accident? So, let's put it all together. How do all these pieces, the definition of lordship, that innate belief we have, and all the evidence around us, how do they fit? Well, the sources lay out a really clear, logical path from just acknowledging something to having a complete, active faith. So, the journey starts with step 1, acknowledging the single creator, the Lord of everything. But you can't just stop there. That acknowledgement naturally leads you to step 2, understanding the massive implication. If there's only one creator, owner, and sustainer, well, then it only makes sense that he alone deserves to be worshipped. And that realization demands step 3. You have to actually do it. You put that belief into action through exclusive devotion. And this idea completely reframes the whole point of divine revelation. According to the sources, the prophets weren't really sent to convince people that God existed, because, most people already believed that in some way. They were sent to fix how people worshipped. Their mission was to call people back from praying to created things and get them to focus all of that devotion solely on the one who did the creating. Now, of course, we've really only just scratched the surface today. There is so much more depth and nuance to this topic. So for a much deeper dive, you've absolutely got to check out the full source material. We've put a link for you right in the description. And as you do that, we'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. If the universe isn't just some random cosmic accident, but is actually a planned, deliberate creation, what does that say about our own role and our own responsibility within it? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.